Imagine stepping off a plane. You get that immediate rush of salty air, the tropical heat hits you,
Yeah.
and before your eyes even adjust to that incredible turquoise water, you're struck by something else.
Hmm.
It's the people. The incredible, vibrant range of faces around you. I mean, you see individuals with striking light eyes, maybe fairer olive skin, and then others with rich, dark complexions and just, wow, a cascade of curly hair. It's
Hmm.
this human spectrum that just completely defies any single typical look. It's really captivating, almost disorienting in its diversity.
It really is something you notice right away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So today we're doing a deep dive into that very observation. What makes the people of the Maldives look so incredibly diverse? It's a question that, well, it unlocks centuries of history, migration, and the unique geography of these Indian Ocean
A
islands.
lot packed into that question.
Right. Our mission is to unpack the story etched into the faces, into the bodies of Maldivians, showing you how every skin shade, every eye color, every hair texture tells this living tale of being at a crossroads of the world. So, if you've ever been curious about how geography and history literally shape how people look, get ready for some really illuminating insights. We'll show you why there's no single typical Maldivian and, what that actually means for identity and culture today.
Well, what's truly fascinating here is realizing the Maldives wasn't just, isolated paradise islands. It's always been far more than that.
Yeah.
A really bustling maritime hub.
A hub in the middle of the Indian Ocean.
Absolutely. Historians tell us the earliest settlers came from southern India and Sri Lanka, over 2,000 years ago. They brought ancient cultures, languages.
Okay, so that's the foundation.
That's the base layer. Then, fast forward to the 12th century, Arab traders arrive. They bring Islam, of course, but they also leave really significant genetic and cultural footprints, change the whole archipelago.
Right.
But the story doesn't stop there. You also had East African sailors coming through for trade, Southeast Asian voyagers passing by, even some European colonizers touched these shores eventually. Each group left its own distinct mark.
Wow, so it wasn't just a stopover. People actually stayed intermingled. It sounds less like isolated islands and more like a kind of grand central station of the sea.
That's a great way to put it. People from all directions passed through, traded, and yes, often settled, leaving a little piece of themselves, genetically speaking, behind.
And we actually have ways to quantify that now, don't we? What does modern science like the genetic studies tell us about this melting pot?
Yeah, the modern genetic work, especially studies from around 2017, gives us some really specific numbers. They found that Maldivians, on average, carry roughly 60–70% South Asian ancestry.
Okay, the majority.
The majority, yeah. Then about 20–25% Middle Eastern admixture. And finally, a smaller but still significant chunk, maybe 5–10%, from African and Southeast Asian input.
So that specific genetic recipe, that explains why you see such different looks.
Precisely. That's why some individuals might look very Sri Lankan, others might remind you of people from the Arabian Peninsula, and still others show physical traits more linked to African or Southeast Asian populations. These percentages directly account for that incredible tapestry of features.
That's a powerful point. These aren't just abstract numbers. They're literally, written on people's faces.
So beyond the big picture genetics, let's zoom in a bit. You mentioned the striking variation in skin tones. How does that genetic heritage play out in skin color across the islands? It's quite pronounced, actually.
Yeah.
Surveys show that maybe 55%, or just over half, have a medium brown skin tone. That's often seen as the most common.
Okay.
But if you travel north to the northern atolls, you'll notice lighter olive or fairer complexions are more frequent. That directly reflects that stronger South Asian and Middle Eastern genetic influence we just talked about.
Yeah. Okay.
Conversely, head south, and darker brown complexions become more prevalent. This links back to stronger African and Dravidian ancestry.
Dravidian. Remind us who that refers to.
Sure. Dravidian refers to an ancient group, mainly found in southern India and parts of Sri Lanka. Their populations were among some of the very earliest settlers in the Maldives, contributing significantly, especially in the south.
Got it. So that north-south distinction tied to specific ancestral groups, that really helps explain the visual differences. But here's where it gets, well, really interesting for me. There's a whole societal discussion around these skin tones, isn't there? It's not just biology.
Oh, absolutely not. It's deeply cultural, too.
Maldivian media, like in many places, often seems to favor lighter skin, sort of aligning with those global beauty standards we see everywhere.
That's a critical observation, and yes, that preference exists. It definitely creates a fascinating tension. Because while global standards might push one way,
Right.
there's simultaneously this powerful counter-narrative within the Maldives itself. Darker tones are often linked to a deeper sense of authenticity, resilience maybe,
Yeah.
especially for islanders whose lives are most tied to the ocean, the equatorial sun.
Ah, so their complexion can almost symbolize a connection to traditional life, a kind of hardiness.
Exactly, a connection to the traditional Maldivian way of life born of the elements. It's a really complex interplay of identity, history, and these external versus internal ideas about beauty and belonging.
So it's almost like two stories running at once,
Okay.
one trying to fit global trends, the other championing this really rooted, sun-kissed authenticity. How do people actually navigate that? Does it show up in everyday life?
Oh, definitely. You might see it subtly in advertising, perhaps, where lighter-skinned models get preference, but then turn around at a cultural festival, and the darker-skinned, sun-weathered fisherman might be held up as the absolute epitome of Maldivian heritage.
Hmm.
It can create a kind of quiet social hierarchy sometimes, sure, but also a really strong sense of pride and community among those who identify more with those authentic, darker tones. The whole debate is very much alive when people talk about who represents the true Maldivian.
It's just incredible how these historical echoes are so visible. Does hair also show these different migration patterns? What story do Maldivian hair types tell us?
They certainly do. Looking at hair texture, roughly 65% of Maldivians typically have wavy black or dark brown hair. Pretty common.
Okay.
Then you'll find about 20% with straight hair. That's often seen more in families with stronger South Asian or maybe Arab ancestry.
Right.
And finally, about 15% have curly or even tightly coiled hair, which is a really clear reflection of that African input, likely from those ancient Indian Ocean trade routes.
And the color is mostly dark.
Mostly jet black to dark brown, yes, though you do occasionally see lighter browns, even reddish hues sometimes. But interestingly, those often come from specific South Asian or African gene variants, not necessarily from European mixing.
That's a fascinating detail. So it's not just skin, eyes, hair. Even the very structure of the face can tell a regional story across these islands. How much do facial features actually vary?
Oh, they vary significantly.
Yeah.
Facial features often mirror those concentrated genetic influences we talked about, region by region.
Like how?
Well, in the northern atolls, for example, you're more likely to see lighter skin, maybe straighter noses, wavy hair, echoing that South Asian and Arab mix.
Okay.
Move towards the central atolls, especially around the capital, Malé, and you find more of a blend. Olive to medium brown skin, maybe more oval faces, moderate nasal bridges.
A real mix there.
Exactly. Then head down to the southern atolls, and you see that stronger African and Dravidian influence. Typically darker skin, often curlier hair, maybe broader noses.
Wow.
In fact, anthropological data actually records up to a 12% variation in craniofacial dimensions, skull and face measurements between northern and southern atolls.
12%. That sounds like a lot for such a relatively small population spread out like that.
It is notable. It implies a couple of things. Visually, yes, it means someone from the north can look quite different from someone from the south, even to a casual observer. It's not
Yeah.
just subtle. And historically, it underscores that while the Maldives was a crossroads, different ancestral groups settled and intermarried more intensely in certain regions. They maintained some distinct genetic pockets, at least before modern travel made everything more mixed. It highlights the layers of history, literally in their bones.
And what about things like height and build? Does that also reflect these different influences?
Generally, Maldivians tend to be of medium build. Again, that probably reflects the mixed heritage and a lifestyle traditionally linked to the coast to the sea.
Makes sense.
Average height for men is about 170 centimeters. That's roughly 5'7". For women, around 157 centimeters, so 5'2".
Okay. Any regional differences there too?
Yep, subtle ones. Northern Maldivians tend to be slightly taller, averaging maybe 171, 172 centimeters for men. Southern Maldivians slightly shorter, closer to 168, 169 centimeters.
Interesting.
And another interesting point, a health survey from 2020 noted about a 2-centimeter increase in average height just since the 1980s.
Oh, wow. Why is that?
Mostly attributed to better nutrition and improved healthcare over the last few decades, a common trend globally, but visible there too.
Okay, so we have this incredible genetic mixing, clear regional variations in skin, hair, face shape, even height, which brings us smack into the core question, almost a philosophical one. Is there really such a thing as a typical Maldivian look? It feels impossible to pin down.
And that is exactly where The controversy, or maybe just the lively debate, really sharpens.
Okay.
It's a question of identity that resonates deeply within the Maldivian community
How
itself.
so?
Well, some might argue that yes, the typical Maldivian is that medium brown-skinned, wavy-haired islander you often see in the central atolls, simply because it might represent the largest single group.
Kind of a statistical average.
Sort of,
Hmm.
but many others strongly push back against that. They emphasize the breadth of diversity across all the islands. They point to the lighter-skinned northerners, the darker southern islanders with their unique ties, the huge variety of mixed families in Malay. To impose one typical look, they argue, basically erases centuries of complex history and the actual lived reality for so many people.
It strikes me this isn't just academic talk. It must be deeply personal. If you're growing up there, how do these competing ideas of a typical look affect your sense of belonging? It feels like identity is shaped by more than just DNA here, right? Geography must play a massive role.
Absolutely, it's profoundly personal. And you're spot on. Geography is just as influential as ancestry. You see regional pride emerge quite strongly from this.
Langston's.
Northerners, with those clearer historical ties to Arab traders, sometimes emphasize those connections. It can be seen as a marker of perhaps sophistication, a link to the wider Islamic world.
Okay.
Meanwhile, Southerners might really highlight their African and Dravidian roots, embracing a heritage tied to ancient seafaring cultures and that resilience we mentioned. And then you have Malay, the capital, which is just inherently cosmopolitan. It's a vibrant blend of everything where any single identity is naturally much more fluid. It creates this rich, complex mosaic of belonging. Your atoll, your family history, your appearance, they all feed into your sense of self.
To really bring this alive, you once painted a picture for me from Molly's fish market. Could you share that again? It feels like such a perfect snapshot of everything we're discussing.
Certainly. Yeah, just imagine strolling through that market. So much energy. You might see a light-skinned man. Maybe he has hazel eyes, quite a distinct nose, and he's skillfully weighing tuna.
Uh-huh.
Right beside him, maybe a woman with medium brown skin, lovely wavy black hair, her oval face framed by her scarf, and she's meticulously arranging baskets of breadfruit.
Okay, different looks already.
Exactly. And then further down the row, you spot a darker-skinned fisherman. Maybe he has tightly coiled hair, a big, wide, sun-creased smile. He's carrying in a heavy net, and his broader features just speak of generations living by the sea. Each face, each set of features, tells a different story of where they or their ancestors came from.
And what really hits me about that image is the faces are all so different, yet every single one belongs fully to the Maldives. It's such a powerful visual, isn't it? Showing how diversity is just baked into the national identity. And this appearance, it must tie deeply into pride and ancestry.
Precisely. Families will proudly talk about their Arab lineage or their Southern Island roots or their mixed heritage. These stories get passed down, creating this deep sense of connection to the past, shaping who you feel you are. It's a source of immense pride, connecting individuals back through millennia of trade and migration.
But, and there often seems to be a but, when history layers different groups together, there can be a darker side to this diversity too, can't there? Lingering prejudice. Does that show up in Maldivian society today?
Unfortunately, yes, that prejudice does exist. It's important to acknowledge. Darker-skinned Maldivians, for instance, sometimes face stereotypes. These might be linked to perceived lower social standing or maybe less refined features, according to some biased views. And you can sometimes observe a disparity where lighter-skinned individuals might be more dominant in media, maybe in politics, even certain social circles. It shows how those global beauty standards, the ones favoring lighter skin, can unfortunately seep in and amplify internal biases. It can create subtle, sometimes not so subtle, forms of discrimination. It's a painful reality that sits alongside the celebration of diversity.
However, it sounds like it's not a static situation. You mentioned a positive shift happening, especially with younger Maldivians really challenging these old norms. How are they doing that?
They absolutely are. It's actually a really powerful and inspiring movement to watch. Social media in particular is playing a huge role. You see campaigns using hashtags like hashtags Maldivian Beauty or hashtag My Skin My Pride. Young influencers, artists, everyday people are celebrating their darker skin tones, their curly hair, their specific island features, actively pushing back against those imported, often narrow beauty standards.
That's great.
Yeah, they're posting images, sharing stories that promote the idea that all Maldivian appearances are beautiful, that they're all part of one unified national identity. These movements are fostering a much-needed conversation, encouraging self-acceptance and pushing for a broader, more inclusive definition of what it means to look Maldivian.
So, bringing this all together, then, pulling from the history, the genetics, the specific traits we've talked about, and these ongoing societal conversations, what's the big takeaway from our deep dive into this, well, ocean of faces?
I think the central finding, the one scientists and historians really agree on, is that there just isn't one single Maldivian look. It can't exist. The islands are simply too diverse, their history too deeply intertwined with the whole Indian Ocean world for one simple archetype to hold true. Maldivians today visibly carry that South Asian, Arab, African, and Southeast Asian heritage. It's all there, etched into their faces, their bodies, from light-eyed northerners with straighter features to curly-haired southerners with darker skin, from fair-skinned families with strong Arab ancestry to golden brown islanders tied to ancient Dravidian roots. Every single Maldivian face tells a complex, layered story.
So, what truly makes the people of the Maldives look so distinct, so diverse? The answer ultimately seems to lie in the sea itself.
Exactly. Trade, migration, that unique geography, it all brought together these distinct cultures and peoples from South Asia, Arabia, Africa, and beyond. And they left this indelible mark.
So when you see a Maldivian, whether they have that olive skin and striking light eyes, or golden brown skin and wavy hair, or darker skin and a rich cascade of curls, you are not seeing contradictions. You are seeing the Maldives itself, written in human diversity.
Beautifully put.
And maybe the most beautiful lesson here is this. The true beauty of the Maldives isn't only in those stunning beaches and vibrant reefs, but it's right there in the faces of its people. Each one carrying the living, breathing history of the ocean, just waiting for you to discover their story.